So welcome to everybody that's tuning in with us. Some of you may have been with us since this morning through the whole conference, and some of you may be just tuning in. But welcome to the Caring for the Veteran Caregiver Conference. My name is Candace Christensen, and I am the coordinator for the Caregiver Coalition of Northeast Florida. We are thrilled to start our third session of the Caring for the Veteran Caregiver Conference, and I've been really excited for this one. So before we get started, I just want to quickly go over some housekeeping items. Just so you're aware, the session is being recorded and it's going to be posted to our website. If you could please stay muted and keep the cameras off through the duration of the session, just so we can eliminate any potential distractions. You can turn on speaker view in the top right corner of your Zoom screen so that you'll be able to see the speaker better. We are utilizing the chat box feature for questions. So if at any point during the presentation or towards the end during our Q&A discussion, you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them into the chat box and I'll make sure that they get shared. And lastly, we try to be prepared as we can, and nothing has happened so far, but in case we run into any technical difficulties, we will try to resolve them as quickly as possible. So I am thrilled to give a few minutes to Justine Conley. Justine is the Associate State Director for AARP Florida, who is a 2020 Silver Sponsor of the Caregiver Coalition. Justine's also the Vice Chair of the Coalition and chairs our Events Committee. Thank you so much for joining us, Justine.
It is absolutely wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Candace. You're doing a great job with the coalition. And as you said, I'm Justine Conley, and AARP is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and our whole purpose is to enhance the quality of life for the 50+ population. And so one of those populations that we get a chance to enhance the life of and be a part of are the 4.1 million veteran members that AARP serves. And so we have a real commitment to veterans. And we also recognize just nationally that we have more than 5.5 million caregivers. And so caregiving is one of our top priorities, not only in North Florida, but also across the whole AARP enterprise. I just want to tell you 4 priorities really quickly that AARP works to support veterans. The first is caring for the caregiver, the family caregiver. We have a caregiver's guide that is specific for caregivers. If you've ever been to any of our sessions in person, we always have the caregiver guide, but we have one specific for family caregivers. The second way that we help to support family caregivers is fighting fraud, and that is through the Operation Protect Veterans. We target veterans to try to figure out ways to rip them off, and so AARP tries to provide resources for veterans. The third way that we support veterans is easing transitions throughout the life with a program called Working Jobs, resume writing, job boards, but helping veterans of all ages through the transitions of coming out of the military and back into civilian life. The fourth, but not least, is connecting veterans and military families to their earned benefits. We have seminars both locally and nationally that you can access. If you're interested in finding out more about the Veterans Guide, Family Caregiver Guide, you can go to aarp.org/veteran or aarp.org/caregiving. And I can promise you this, there will be more than what you can read in one sitting as far as resources. So we're going to ask Candace to put that email in and website in the chat, and so you can get it later. But thank you for being here. And I get the honor and privilege of introducing our next speaker. And so I'm thrilled because she's a long-term friend of not only AARP, but a long-term friend of the Caregiver Coalition. And so our speaker is a nurse practitioner for more than 30 years. She was with the Department of Veteran Affairs. Her work included the director of hospice program and working with over 10,000 veterans at the end of life. The lessons she learned inspired her to start the Opus Peace, a nonprofit organization with a mission taking the message of soul injury to people all over the country, educating them on how to have self-compassion, to connect with the part of the self, in holding on to the part of the self that's holding on to the pain of past trauma in order to heal and connect them to their true selves. Deborah joins us today to share about secondary traumatic stress disorder, the physical and emotional support assets to help with caregiving that can wear a person down. I have the privilege of introducing to some and reintroducing to others, Ms. Deborah Grassman. Welcome, Deborah.
Well, thank you so much, Candace. I so appreciate your willingness to support this project. That I love hearing all that you are doing as a resource for veterans, and that you have not neglected caregivers, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So, and I also absolutely appreciate Elder Source, what you are doing to do the Caregiver Coalition to further this movement. So I just want to make sure, can you hear me okay? And are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes, both of those, Deborah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started then. So as Justine said, I am a hospice nurse practitioner who worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs for 30 years. And during that time, I learned how veterans have unique needs because of their military background. And I also learned that their families have unique needs. So today I want to talk about those needs of veteran families. And I'm also going to talk about the needs and responsibilities of professional healthcare providers who care for veterans. So let's first talk about personal caregiving. So if you are a spouse, a child, a parent, a sibling who loves a veteran and is providing care to that veteran, you may find that you need the same things that non-veteran caregivers need. You need comfort, emotional support of friends and family, information, and coping skills. You may also discover that the military culture may create some special needs for you as a caregiver of a veteran. So that's what I want to talk about this day. So there's some military issues that you may know about, but yet not realize how they are impacting your caregiving. You may notice that the stoicism that your loved one was taught in the military has had an impact on your whole family. Maybe your veteran's stoic veneer keeps you from knowing what he or she is really feeling. At the same time, maybe you have also adopted a stoic front. Just like your veteran, perhaps you hide uncomfortable feelings behind a silent or angry facade, or a cavalier humor, or an attitude of bravado, or an "I'm fine" wall of denial, because that became the tone that was adopted by the whole family system. Perhaps you're like the wife of a career Marine who said to me, "I'm just as much a Marine as he is." Or maybe it's just the opposite. Your veteran holds you in slightly less esteem because you are not a veteran. So your opinion is not quite valued as much as the veteran's buddies. As you probably well know, tears are considered a sign of weakness in the military. Good soldiers stuff their grief. Good soldiers march on no matter what. You may find that when there is a loss in the family, your veteran may not respond to it the way you would expect. Now, veterans are often fiercely independent. sometimes evenly, kind of humorously called stubbornly independent. And they come by this quite honestly. They were trained to be tough, to protect, to keep going no matter what, to never give up or give in. And these are great qualities that help them achieve and be successful. The problem is they often refuse to ask for help, even when they clearly need it. And this can make caregiving especially hard when the veteran gets sick or gets older and needs more help. I remember one veteran who was given a terminal diagnosis and was driving his daughter nuts because he wouldn't let her help him. He said, "I don't want anyone with me through this. I don't want people to see me weak." But what really scared the daughter was when he added, "When I can't take care of myself, I'm just going to go out in the woods and die." And she was afraid that he would actually find a way to do it. And don't think that stubborn independence is reserved for male veterans. Female veterans are just as tough and stubbornly independent, sometimes more so. Remember, women often had to prove themselves. They had to show their male counterparts that they were just as tough and they could get the job done. They were not sissies. So another issue is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The research is now clear that trauma changes the brain. The changes in the brain cause behaviors that are often difficult for the family to live with. There may be nightmares, hypervigilance, where the veteran is always looking out for danger, being a bit suspicious, and maybe even a bit paranoid. Triggers might cause the veteran to be irritable and easily provoked into anger. And you may have a lot of avoidance and withdrawal behaviors, including using numbing agents to avoid the intrusive symptoms of PTSD. Now, these changes impact everyone around them. So PTSD does not exist in a vacuum. It affects whole family systems, even whole generations of family systems. So combat veterans sometimes come to the end of their lives with unresolved grief or guilt associated with military duty. Perhaps this is best captured by a poem entitled Atoning by Ron Mann, and it's displayed in the National Vietnam Veterans Art Museum in Chicago. This is what Ron writes. Hoping and wishing you can settle this whole thing in your mind about this war, resolving it within yourself before the time of atonement comes. Weeping and crying at the end of your life. This is an example of the moral injury that I have seen surface in hospice with dying veterans sometimes. And these kinds of issues can sometimes cause agitation at the end of life. And our Vietnam vets, they often suffer what's known as secondary wounding. Let me explain with a poem. The book Visions of War, Dreams of Peace is written by women who served in the Vietnam War. They suffered PTSD and they used poetry and the arts to access the soul so their losses could be mourned, released, and integrated within themselves rather than compartmentalized. I want to read one poem. It's entitled, Do You Really Want to Know? And it will help you understand secondary wounding. Do you really want to know? Do you really want to know how you can help me? Then don't turn your back on me as if I was to blame. You share in this too. I did the dirty work. The least you can do is to listen to me. Do you hear the bitterness? This is an example of secondary wounding. Secondary wounding is people's response to trauma with disbelief or denial, minimization, stigmatization, or refusal to help. And it is especially damaging if it blames the victim. And that's what happened with our Vietnam vets. Often right in the airports as they were coming home, they were called murderers, baby killers, and they were spit upon right as they came home. This is secondary wounding. This is a quote that I've heard more than a few times from Vietnam vets. What happened to me in Vietnam was bad, but what happened to me when I got home was worse. Let's just pause for a moment to let that sink in, to realize the impact this had on them. Because the truth is, we did not want to hear them. So their stories often got locked up into unconsciousness. And sometimes when they reemerge is many years later. I've certainly seen this in hospice care. Another issue is bereavement care for veterans. Some of you may be doing bereavement care in hospice, and bereavement care for veterans may be a bit different. For example, a veteran's inability to grieve someone's death might be due to fear of unresolved grief from comrades who died in battle. And this fear can sometimes cause the veteran to detach from grief. One veteran I took care of had a 15-year-old son who was killed in a car accident. To the dismay of his wife, he was not able to grieve his son's death. Instead, he flashed back to his service in Vietnam and became obsessed with an incident when he was in a convoy and watched a truck run over a Vietnamese boy who was about 15. He was horrified as they were ordered to continue on their assignment as the boy was left dying on the road. So his bereavement care first had to focus on working through this unmourned loss from 40 years earlier. Then and only then was he able to join his family in grieving the death of his own son. So, do some of these issues that I'm bringing up sound familiar to you? Many of you know this already because you are living with them every day. Can you see how this increases caregiver burden? Can you see how some of these issues complicate peaceful living and even peaceful dying? For the veteran and for you. Remember, as the veteran's needs increase, so do your needs increase. Now, you're probably acutely aware of your veteran's needs. Unfortunately, you may only be dimly aware of your own increasing needs. You may be so focused on your veteran's needs that you even get squeezed out of your own life. Or you may be losing your own sense of self, and that is called a soul injury. So a soul injury is a wound to your sense of self, your real self, beyond the facade. Soul injuries are most commonly caused by unmourned loss and hurt, and unforgiven guilt and shame. So let's look at the losses you may be carrying. Losses that may hurt. Losses you may not even realize that you are carrying. Losses that may benefit from mourning them so they can be released. I was facilitating a veterans caregiver workshop. The caregivers ranged in age from 20 to 75, and the veterans they cared for ranged from the Iraq and Afghanistan war to World War II. Some of the caregivers were spouses, others were adult children, and if the veteran was young, the caregiver was often a parent. The caregivers had no trouble identifying the losses their veteran had sustained. But when I asked them about the losses they had sustained, they could hardly identify any at first. Finally, one loss was identified, then another, and then another. And then the losses came tumbling out so fast from these veteran caregivers that I could hardly get them written down on the board fast enough to keep up with them. So these that you see on the screen are just some of the losses that they identified. Of course, the more disabled a veteran was, the more losses the caregiver had sustained. Now here are some more losses that they identified. What was maybe seemingly a bit surprising is I wish you could have seen the energy generated in this room, almost excitement, as it dawned on these caregivers just how many losses they were carrying. Then I asked them a simple question. I said, do you now understand why you may be feeling the way you do? Can you have a little self-compassion for the load you are carrying? So I do want to focus for a moment on one particular loss that you see highlighted on your screen, because I think it is especially important, and that is the loss of the person sent off to war. We all know that a person is forever changed by war and trauma. The person you send off to war is not the person who comes back. Now, even though we say that in our head, in our heart, what do we want? We want that person to go back to the way they used to be. And consciously or unconsciously, you will send signals to that person that you hope they'll go back to the way they used to be. Now, what's the problem with that? You're going to be continually disappointed when that doesn't happen. And the veteran, they're going to feel like they're letting you down. And that often makes them feel guilty. So inner conflicts and relationship conflicts, understandably, commonly arise from this. So what do? Well, I tell people that before they do anything else, they need to grieve the loss of the person they sent off to war. Otherwise, they will unknowingly cling to how things used to be and will miss opening up to how things are now. When I did that veteran caregiver training groups that I told you about a minute ago, at the end, I'd always ask, what was the one take-home point that helped them the most? And it was often that they now realized that they needed to let go of used-to-bes by mourning what can no longer be. So let me show you a slideshow that will help us better understand. So make sure you can see your screen. And if you can read the words to yourself before the music starts, and see if you're recognize yourself in the words and the images that are going to come.
She wanders through the valleys and the hills on this dark, dark winter's night. The leaves left the trees and the townspeople cast her to the waning light, searching for a home, searching for a place to rest her head. There is something inside of her wanting release on this dark, dark winter's night. The story in the heavens reminds her of separation, no suffering, only one. And the angels sing, glory, come lay your head, glory, and you shall be fed as you bring forth light to the world this dark night. I wandered through the streets of the desert on this dark, dark winter's night, treading with a heavy heart, broken by the war raging around me. Red and blue sirens are singing in the key of tragedy. Yet the peace that passes all understanding is standing here, holding me. The story of the heavens reminds me of light divine, where there is no hunger, no hate, no greed, only one. And the angels sing, glory, come lay your head, glory, and you shall be fed as you bring forth light to the world on this dark night. We wander through the valleys and the hills on this dark, dark winter's night. I reach for your hand and walk beside you, my lantern grows bright. The story in the heavens beckons us to light divine, where there is no fear, no separation, no suffering, only one. And the angels sing, glory, come lay your head, glory, and you are fed as you bring forth light to the world, as we bring forth light to the world, as we bring forth light to the world on this dark night.
So I hope from that you are able to see how you are able to bring light forth from darkness, from trauma, and the true gifts that you are and the sacrifices that you make. So are you or have you been connected to a veteran and lived some of what we've already talked about? If you have, I often call military families unsung heroes, because veterans are often identified as heroes, but their family members' contributions can often be ignored or minimized. So let me give you a bird's eye view of the impact of the aftermath of war on veterans' families. I'll never forget a veteran in my audience who stood up when I finished speaking, and this is what he said. When I came home, my wife gave me love, respect, and comfort. I gave her Vietnam. I could only stand there that day absorbing the poignancy of the truth in his words. Now, traumatized people often understandably develop dysfunctional coping mechanisms to deal with what they've experienced. And this kind of lifestyle may precipitate divorce and may precipitate the creation of multiple families. In fact, there's a saying among Vietnam veterans that sort of overly simplifies this issue. They say, you know, many veterans with PTSD have been married 3 times. So perhaps you're the first family. Maybe you were abandoned when the veteran first returned home from war and was unable to reconnect with you. So you and your children may be a bit angry. Or maybe you were in the second family when the veteran remarried. You and your children may have lived with abuse, drugs, and alcohol and developed dysfunctional coping mechanisms as well. After a second divorce, the veteran may have gotten into recovery and gotten help for his or her PTSD. So a third marriage is often to someone who already has children. If this is you, your children may reap the benefit of the veteran's recovery and think their stepfather or stepmother is very special. So imagine this veteran's deathbed or their funeral with all of these family members present at the same time. I have witnessed it many times, and you can appreciate the wide range of anger, estrangement, and forgiveness issues that may surface in this highly charged emotional environment. So these are, even though this is a small percentage of veterans, I don't want to be characterizing these, but what I am trying to show you is the complications that arise that often need special attention. Again, let me read you a poem from the book Visions of War, Dreams of Peace. This poem is entitled For Molly. What did you do in the war, Mommy? Hazel eyes shining brightly. I wrote a story about a war, Mommy, where nobody got guns or dead. This one was a good war. Why do you have tears now, Mommy? Do you hear the generational soul injury that got transferred from this Vietnam veteran to her daughter? I guarantee you that if you had a grandparent who served in World War II before you were even born, it impacted your family system. It impacted you. Now, families of Vietnam vets also suffered secondary wounding. These are just some of the quotes that people in my audience have come up to tell me after I would get through speaking. I hated Peter Jennings when I was a kid. He called my dad a quote unquote hired killer. Somehow I felt responsible. We were stationed in Japan. Demonstrators actually came on base to harass not only the soldiers, but us kids. It was scary. I didn't understand what was happening. I hated social studies. The other kids knew my dad was in Vietnam and blamed me for it. So you can see some of the unique issues that happened with the Vietnam War because of the secondary wounding that we, as the general public, put on them and on their children. So we were filming my presentation, Wounded Warriors, a few years ago, and after I got done speaking, the cameraman said to me, "Boy, I just learned a lot about my dad." And then he said something that was very intriguing to me. He said, "I realize now that I survived the military." he told me a few of the hardships he had endured because his father was a Vietnam veteran. So I ended up coming back the next day, and we filmed what he had to say. Now, he didn't want his real name used or his face to be shown, so I'm going to call him David, which is not his real name, and we filmed him from the back. So this is about 10 minutes, but just really pay attention to this adult son who describes what it was like in his household.
David, one of the things, as you told us a little bit, kind of briefly about your father, and we thanked you for the sacrifices that you had made because of what he had been through. You said, well, I don't know about sacrifices. What I know is I survived the military.
Very true.
So tell me a little bit about what that was like for you.
I have to say, I have to give you a little detail about my dad to start with. He joined the military at age 17, so he was in before he was supposed to, but he wanted to do his part. And as a part of enlisting, he also got married. So he started as PFC, and at the end of his career, he ended up retiring as lieutenant colonel, and he was a pilot. So he did a lot of things, but it was just a big challenge because everything, the house was run very strictly, but it wasn't the family life that other people that I knew, families I knew that were off base and not connected to the military, they didn't have the same thing. Everything at our place was always very strict, which today still has its value. But there was this other side where it always seems like he was trying to escape, and my mom was trying to escape, and they spent a lot of time with alcohol. And then in the end, and that is actually what took his life.
I'm sorry to hear that. So what branch of service was he in?
Always a Marine.
To his dying day.
To his dying day.
He was a Marine. And he ran his family as if they were the Marine Corps.
Pretty much.
Like.
Yeah. Pretty much.
And did he serve in combat zones? Or?
He served in Korea, but I'm not sure if he was directly involved in specific combat. But in Vietnam, he was a pilot.
Wow.
He was dropping things that he didn't like to do.
How do you know that he didn't like doing that? Did he talk about that?
He didn't want to talk about it, but that was his job. And back then he was flying a Phantom, and they did not have guns, so they really weren't good for dogfighting. They delivered packages. And he went back even for a second tour. But everything he seemed to be involved with in the military pretty much kept him. Everything was focused around military and military life. Those were the big events, the big things. I mean, we still had the birthday parties and the activities, but occasionally we'd have the little family things and we'd go on an outing, but it was always a challenge, and it took him out of what he was most comfortable with.
His comfort zone was that military.
That structure, you must do it this way, and we get it done.
You said the other day that what struck you as you look back on his life is that he was always angry.
Very much so. He could never turn it off, because the only thing that seemed to get rid of his anger was the alcohol. And that was true with him and all of his other Marine Corps buddies. That's everything.
So he kind of stayed ramped up all the time.
All the time. And even when they took it down a notch by getting drunk, that's when they got, I can't think of a better word, feisty, belligerent, nasty.
So maybe he was kind of self-medicating to try to calm down a little bit, and yet, ironically, it
didn't.
It made him kind of nasty, it sounds like.
It let the evil out that he was controlling.
Now, you mentioned earlier that he had been married 8 times.
8. Yep. He wanted the companionship, but it just didn't fit in with what he had to have somebody there, almost per se a caregiver. But there was always something going on that.
I'm guessing he may have been in attack mode with his wives as well in some ways, possibly.
It could be, but then again, alcohol was always a part of it, and he'd say stupid stuff, do stupid stuff. Not that he ever got in problems with the law or something like that, but it was just, you know.
So with all of this going on in his life, how did this impact you as a young boy?
Like I mentioned earlier, there were other kids that I knew, and I envied the lifestyle that they lived, the home life. I mean, we had the Thanksgiving meals, but it was like you did the meal and it was over. Now you're back to regimentation, even though it wasn't, but there were basic rules you had to follow. Not to say that we didn't get away with stuff, because I think all kids can find a way to do that. But there was never a fluidness, a family functionality that you could find with another family that wasn't in the military.
So you saw softness maybe in other households that was kind of lacking.
Unity.
Unity.
I would think would be a better word.
Okay.
Everybody, they were together because they wanted to be together. They enjoyed being together. But on our side of it, I felt like we were commanded, directed, ordered.
Controlled.
We're going to do this.
Control, yeah.
And that's the way it went.
Yeah. You know, we see that so often with combat veterans, again, because they are often so helpless in combat with stuff that happens to them. They try to control everything and their families and everybody else that they love, trying to control and protect. And the irony is oftentimes is it sometimes boomerangs.
Yeah, because the other thing that I just happened to think about, and I think I maybe knew it before, but every time my dad was on a tour of duty and he was out of the country, when he came back, I got a sibling.
All right, so.
I mean, it just, I don't know if anybody's done a study on that, but every time he was back in the country,
Okay,
I got a sister, and then another sister, and then a brother.
all right. So that also, when you talk about unit, that was kind of a very fractured family then. Here
Very much
and
so.
there, and the threat of that and what that does to family life. Wow. Well, I can see why you said the other day, I survived the military. I showed this pen earlier when we were filming. It's a little angel pen, and the dress is an American flag. And we made these little cards that says, because we know that you have also paid a price for America's freedom, we honor you with this pen. It's our way of acknowledging the many ways that you have been impacted by the military and the many ways that you have provided care and support to our veteran. So my hope is that each time you look at this, may you appreciate what you have done for our country by surviving the anger that your dad had, the overly rigid structure that you had to endure, in addition to the respect and discipline that have allowed you to be a good father and a productive human being.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So I hope that gives kind of a bird's eye view. Now, I don't think this man's story is necessarily typical, but neither is it uncommon. I have seen those kinds of things many times. The other thing I want to point out is that we don't give that caregiver pin out to just anyone who has a veteran in their midst, because almost everyone knows and loves a veteran. But that doesn't mean that the family member has made a sacrifice. So giving the pin to everyone loses its meaning. So we only give it to those family members who've paid a price of some sort. That way their sacrifice is honored. So when we hear stories such as David's, where there is harsh discipline, or the household was run like the Marine Corps, or numbing agents were used to avoid life, or the child changed schools 8 times, you know, those are sacrifices, and they're sacrifices that often go unnoticed. So while people may be aware of the importance of the military service that your loved one provided for our country, They may not be aware that you too have served. Now, last but not least, I want to address the emotional pain that healthcare professionals sustain as they care for patients, whether they are a veteran or if you're a civilian. Again, from the book, Visions of War, Dreams of Peace, written by women who served in the Vietnam War, this poem is entitled, Hello, David, and it's written by a nurse named Dusty. Hello, David. My name is Dusty. I'm your night nurse. I'll hang more blood and give you something for your pain. I'll stay with you, and I will touch your face. Yes, of course, I'll write your mother and tell her you were brave. I'll write your mother and tell her how much you loved her. I'll write your mother and tell her to give your bratty kid sister a big kiss and a hug. I'll stay with you, and I will hold your hand. I'll stay with you and watch your life flow through my fingers into my soul. I'll stay with you until you stay with me. Goodbye, David. My name is Dusty. I am the last person you will see. I am the last person you will touch. I am the last person who will love you. So long, David. My name is Dusty. David, who will give me something for my pain? So I chose this particular poem for those last few lines. I am the last person you will see. I am the last person you will touch. You know, many of you work in geriatrics. You are sometimes the last person a patient sees and touches. And that's an awesome responsibility that we hold in our hands, a responsibility we don't take lightly. And that last line, who will give me something for my pain? If you work in hospice or funeral home, the emergency room, a nursing home, a trauma counseling center, you are surrounded by stress, trauma, death, pain, grieving families, families in shock, angry families, and that impacts you. That causes the release of stress chemicals. Stress chemicals put you on alert, take you out of being grounded in your body, and often cause you to numb out and disconnect from yourself. And when that happens, it causes professionals to suffer a soul injury. So whether you're a personal caregiver of a veteran or you are a professional caregiver taking care of veterans, you are at risk for self-neglect. Now let's talk about what you can do to help you be full and complete in your own life, in addition to being fully present to the veteran you're caring for. One of the most common ways that soul injuries occur in caregivers is trying to be everything to everybody at all times. You know, you advocate and fight for your loved one or your patients. You want the best for them. And that means you have to be at your best. Now, if you are really good at your caregiving, then you'll have a certain look about you. Do you know what you're supposed to look like? Is this you? Be everywhere at once skates? Hand holder, document, 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 be fiscally responsible, resource manager, answer the phone, toothpicks, don't you love this, toothpicks for sleepy eyes, big heart, perpetual optimist, make sure you're within government regulations, medication dispenser, insurance compliance assurer, keep the environment on an even keel no matter what, answer your boss again, and document, document, document. Does this feel like your life? I know it has felt like my life, both when I've been a personal caregiver and a professional caregiver. And for those of you who work in healthcare professions, do you ever find yourself saying, oh, I never take my break. I don't take lunch, I just snack. I stay over until everything gets done, which is almost every day. You know, these are not things to be proud of. Yet sometimes we are so proud that we are critical of others who don't skip their breaks. So first thing we have to do is forgive yourself for not being the perfect caregiver. There will be times when you let your patients or your loved one down. There will be times when, despite your best efforts, bad stuff happens that you have no control over. When you don't take care of yourself, when you neglect your own needs, when you don't seek healthy ways to meet your needs, then you are at risk for acquiring a soul injury. Whether you're a personal caregiver or a professional caregiver, it's important that you recognize that martyrs are not heroes. It takes honesty, courage, and humility to let yourself be vulnerable, to let yourself be human with needs of your own, and to be able to ask for help. Now, becoming a gracious receiver is not always easy for conscientious caregivers, but it's not too late to learn. And it starts with self-compassion, which means developing the self-compassioning skill. Now, at Opus Peace, we use the term self-compassioning because we want to emphasize that self-compassion is not as much a thing, a noun, as it is a verb, something you do. It's a process. And self-compassioning begins when you allow yourself to feel whatever you feel, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. It includes mourning the losses that you are experiencing. Mourning the losses you've experienced is important because that's what helps you release them. And let me show you just a simple technique that'll help you do that. It's called the anchoring heart technique. And you simply lower your eyes or close them completely, and maybe you can just do that now, whatever you prefer, and place one or both hands firmly and tenderly on your heart and breathe deeply. Breathe deeply. And now, as you are breathing deeply, take a moment to feel whatever you are feeling. I've talked about a lot of different things that may have touched different places within you. Just take a moment to be open, even if it's a little bit distressing. Still breathing deeply, connecting with whatever you might be feeling. And now just pause for a moment and be still. Let yourself become curious about the place inside you that is strong enough to hold whatever you're feeling without fear. This place inside you that's not afraid of your emotional pain and is also not afraid of your goodness and your beauty. So I just encourage you to use this little simple grounding technique whenever you might feel anxious or overwhelmed, whenever you are in need of more strength, and whenever you need to honor yourself with your own goodness and beauty. So Bessel van der Kolk, in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, talks about how the simple body techniques such as the anchoring heart technique can really help us with our unmourned loss, because what happens is unmourned loss and hurt gets stored in our bodies, our minds, and our soul. There's even a famous saying that goes like this: those who grieve well, heal well. I've also heard it said, those who grieve well, live well. And that's because grieving allows us to let go of the past, let go of what was, and open up to what is. Open up to the present moment. The problem is, mainly, we want to minimize emotional pain. We want to pretend it's not there. We want to medicate it, numb it. And if we're a caregiver, we want to fix it. We want to rescue others. We want to make hurts magically disappear. But when you box up your pain, your vitality, your personhood gets boxed up as well. Not only that, you miss the secret lesson for releasing those losses, which is grieving. So make no mistake about it. It takes honesty, courage, and humility to open your heart to emotional pain, whether it be your own or others. But fear of emotional pain does far more damage than feeling the pain that's already there. So you are bearing many hardships if you're a caregiver, either personal or professional. And to prevent hardships from turning into burdens requires forgiveness. And you have a lot to forgive as a caregiver of veterans. We've already said that you have to forgive yourself for not being perfect, which means you might let others down sometime. But if you're caring for a veteran, you may also have to forgive the world for having war and trauma in it. Forgive God for allowing the world to have war and trauma in it. Forgive your loved one for changing and not being the way they used to be. Forgive the losses you have sustained. Forgive friends and family members for not understanding, for not helping. You have to forgive your helplessness and loss of control with the parts of your life you can't change. You have to forgive your body for getting tired and not being able to condense 48 hours of work into 12 hours, and lots more. And as we're able to participate in the forgiveness process, we become more grounded in truth rather than the illusion of how things should be. You know, humbling experiences create humility. You learn how to ask for help and to stop thinking that you can or should be able to do it all by yourself. So give yourself permission to have needs. Your veterans' needs are important, but so are yours. Validate the toll that caregiving takes. There's no need to maintain a stoic front with yourself. The part of you that is tired can actually receive some energy when you let go of denial and acknowledge the hardship that that part of yourself is carrying. You can then even thank that part of yourself for the load that it is carrying. Accept your limitations. You can't be everything at all times for all people, including your veteran. It's okay to say no, even to your veteran. Although this may be difficult at first because you don't want to disappoint others, or you want to do everything possible to maximize your veteran's quality of life, the reality is you do have limits. Surprisingly, you'll probably find that respecting your own limits will actually end up liberating you in small ways that have big rewards, both for you and the veteran. And ask for help. Now, this may strike a blow to your pride when your pride is subtly or not so subtly telling you that you are inadequate or incompetent if you can't do it all by yourself. Chronic illness and prolonged caregiving are humbling experiences. Let this be a time of growing humility. When others say, "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help," tell them what they can do and be specific. For example, you know, if you could come over once a month for a few hours so I can get out, that'd be great. Or if I could give you a list of groceries I need, that'd be a big help. Don't get squeezed out of your own life. You've probably allowed your life to gradually be stripped away from you. You may have barely even noticed that this occurred. Your veteran needs you. You need you. Don't take you for granted by not having some hobbies or activities that feed your soul. Be willing to closely scrutinize ways you can add little daily pleasures, even if it's just something like a 15-minute bubble bath that gives you comfort and provides something for you to look forward to. As much as you think that your veteran's world will fall apart for the time that you take for self-care, it probably won't. And even if things don't go well, this isn't a signal to not do self-care. It's a signal to brainstorm other solutions that include your veterans and your needs. And behold yes moments. Maybe it's playing with the grandkids or going out gardening and watching your roses as they bloom, or maybe it's just eating a good hamburger. But taking a moment to open your heart and let yourself behold goodness keeps you connected with your soul. Now, it's easy to become isolated. This often occurs so insidiously that you don't even realize it until after you're cut off from relationships that have suffered lack of attention. So reach out to people. Also, think about faith community groups, exercise classes, retirement communities, book clubs. Reach out, find people. People need other people. You need other people. And something you maybe haven't thought about before, and that is that there are programs that offer respite services to give you a break. If you're a personal caregiver, you may be reluctant to let anyone else take care of your loved one. Why? Because no one can do it the way you do. So first of all, it will help if you can come to grips with the idea that it's okay for your loved one to not have perfect care all the time, because it's not realistic. It's not fair to you. And you have needs too. So there are programs that provide respite care, and I would encourage you to seek those programs out. So lastly, I would say a good way to summarize everything that I've said so far is, don't judge me by my best or my worst day. Both of these and everything in between is the truth. So in this very last section, I just want to provide a few resources for you. So one of the first resources you've already heard, one of the best resources, and that was when Justine told you about AARP. So take advantage of those resources. Again, I do have a book called Peace at Last, and you'll notice the subtitle is Stories of Hope and Healing for Veterans and Their Families, and that's available in hard copy or audio. The thing that gives me the most pleasure is when I hear people say to me, veterans and their families say, I read myself on these pages. We have a website that you see. I hope you will use it. There are lots of free videos and articles here for you on the website. This is a booklet that's available on our website. It's written by our own Pat McGuire, the co-founder of Opus Peace, and it's written, she did bereavement care for veteran families for 20 years. So you'll find that to be a valuable resource as well. And lastly, I want to introduce you to another great resource for those of us who are civilians, and that's Lieutenant Colonel Kathy Lowry Gallowitz. Kathy served for 30 years in the Air Force as a nurse or public affairs officer. Her father's a Vietnam veteran and her husband's an Iraq combat veteran. And after retiring from the military, she started her business, Vanguard Veteran, fulfilling her life's calling to equip civilians to become veteran champions. And I know we have a lot of civilians in our audience today, Kathy, who want to be champions. And so I'm looking forward to them hearing the resource that you can be for them.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Deborah, thank you so much for your presentation. Even though I've attended at least 3 of your leadership forums and I'm a pretty frequent participant in all that you offer, none of us can be reminded often enough to have the courage, honesty, and humility to give ourselves permission to have needs. I certainly need to be reminded of that. So thank you for being such a mentor and so instrumental in my life to help me live well and acknowledge my own unmourned loss and unforgiven guilt and shame. Next slide, please. I am not a combat veteran, but as Deborah said, I'm a daughter of a Vietnam veteran and married to a combat veteran. Here is a dear, sweet, precious friend of mine, Fran, in the bottom right-hand corner. Her son, Major Darren Baldwin, was a Green Beret and about 20 years ago was injured and is now full care. I don't know if any of you may have heard of this primary caregiver, Bianca Baldwin. And so I have some sensitivity to what personal caregivers go through. I myself have been a professional caregiver, maybe a personal caregiver, but through my experiences with Fran, I certainly have a lot of respect and sensitivity, I think, to what many of the caregivers go through. Fran translated her losses into developing the Green Beret Foundation in Cincinnati, Ohio. And she has raised, I don't know, maybe $1 million to help Green Beret families across the nation. So I'm so proud of her. And I just wanted to introduce you to her as an amazing veteran champion, and her son, Darren, who is a West Point graduate and an amazing hero in and of itself. So this is my personal exposure maybe to what some of you are experiencing, but professionally, either as a nurse or a public affairs officer, I'm also very passionate about equipping civilians to become veteran champions because of my walk. Professionally, the Bush Institute that says that 71% of veterans think that Americans don't understand the problems that they say that they've faced since they've served from 9/11, and 55% of veterans feel disconnected from mainstream America. That's why veteran champions are needed so much. What I have tried to do for my friend Fran, like Deborah recommended, is be a good listener. And to really help her express her pain and help her cope by being a good listener. So in my book, Beyond Thank You for Your Service, that you can find on Amazon, I talk about many of the things that Deborah introduced about veterans. That you can see themes of my stoicism and my stubborn independence as I talk about how military culture shapes veterans and their families. Again, I was a military dependent growing up. You'll see alcoholism as part of this story, and how military culture affected me, as Deborah said, the good, the bad, and the beautiful, and why military culture creates a demand for veteran champions. A veteran champion is someone who develops mutually beneficial activities, services, and resources to improve quality of life, workforce, and community. So you, by your service to a veteran, is doing all of those things. And I call veteran champions civilians who have never served. So what I encourage you to do, following up on Deborah's suggestion, is to be specific and ask for help from the civilians in your neighborhood. Civilians really want to help veterans and veteran caregivers, but they're timid, intimidated, uncertain. But if you have the courage to ask for help, not only will it help you, but I contend that it will foster a win-win situation for you and the other people, because you need them and they will benefit from your insight and your knowledge, and they will, as you cultivate relationships with them, really help society in general. And I know you have lots of burdens and hardships, but even if you can do the smallest things to teach society about how they can help you, that'll be a way of you giving back, and it will also be a way for you not to waste your suffering and for you to cultivate support in your future. I know it's hard potentially to sit down and have coffee with everybody, but I encourage you to try and take some time to educate your neighbors, people at your place of work, people in your congregation, because they want to help you and oftentimes are very unsure about how to do that. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you do, because your sacrifices certainly are unsung. But thanks to Deborah's good work, and I believe what you can do as a veteran champion to educate our society, more and more of our citizens will be a part of the win. Please contact me at vanguardveteran.com if I can offer you any more support. I primarily support employers, help them source, hire, and retain veteran talent. and help volunteer faith community leaders create veteran connection ministries. Thank you for all your sacrifices and all you do. And Deborah and Candace, thank you for this opportunity to say hello.
Well, thank you, Kathy. It's so important that we as civilians know what we can do to help. So thank you that you are really focusing on that. So thank you, Candace, for this opportunity, and appreciate your time, energy, and money. I mean, you really are putting your money where your mouth is to bring this program to everybody today. So thank you, thank you, thank you, sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Kathy. I'm really glad you both could join us today. To everyone viewing, this is my first time getting to hear Deborah speak, and I was feeling left out because I've heard so many great things about her, and I didn't actually get the opportunity. And even though this is virtual, you know, I still feel very lucky. So thank you, Deborah, for coming on and sharing your heart and bringing, you know, a sense of peace to everybody that's viewing. So we are going to get ready to start our very last session of the conference. It's going to start at 1:30. So I encourage you, Deborah, I'm going to go ahead and switch our share screen really quickly. So I encourage you to stick around. We're going to be talking with Peter Rosenberger at 1:30, and it's really just going to be a laid-back conversation. He's just going to talk with us and share with us about, you know, kind of the joys and the burdens of caregiving. He's a hoot. If you want to learn more about him, I'm going to put a couple links in the chat to his website and to a YouTube video, just if you want to kind of see what he's about and see what you can look forward to. So we will see you in about 20 minutes.